Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords, here with my special guest, Helen, from the Clueless Fangirl channel. Welcome back, Helen. Really appreciate you coming in here today.
Hello, beautiful people.
Awesome. I think your most recent video on your channel was about the Queens of Numenor, which might be relevant to today's topic, since
Yes.
Tarmirio may come up. Who knows?
Mhm.
But last time you were on, we were discussing our favorite obscure characters.
Oh my God, I love that.
Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about some Amazon series news. So, last week, Fellowship of Fans dropped some shocking news that Isildur would be a major character in season one, appearing as early as episode 3. Now,
Mhm.
I should note that Amazon, I don't think, has publicly confirmed this yet, so it's not been verified. But Fellowship of the Fans, very good track record so far, being correct in their scoops. They've got some insider contacts, obviously, somehow. I don't know anyone, Helen. If you need someone to overanalyze a Tolkien quote, but
Mhm.
I don't have a network of insiders. So, Fellowship of the Fans, tip of the hat to you.
Yeah, he's doing this very, very good. I saw this firsthand. But we need like people theorizing
That's
and
right.
like looking for it, and maybe we'll be lucky with one or two of our guesses when we see the show.
I like it. I like it. So, today, what we're going to do is we're going to assume that the information is correct, that
Yes.
Isildur is a major character in season one, appearing as early as episode 3.
Yeah.
And then we're going to basically ask what that means for the series. So
Yes.
we're going to start, Helen, with you. I know you've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this. What is your best theory or your best case scenario for how Isildur could fit into season one?
Okay, so first of all, I'm being a negative Nelly here because the thing is, what I really, really, really wanted was, I mean, first of all, Hood Sauron, which we still might get, but that is the time of the forging of the rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was super excited to see the time of the forging of the rings, which
Sure.
is the year 1500, where the 19 rings were crafted, and then the one ring, the master ring, 100 years later. I wanted to see, Celebrimbor. I wanted that to be the main plot point. And I mean, I think even you and me have been theorizing about that and
Oh,
what we
big
could
time.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is actually my favorite part of the second age, right? And then Sauron corrupting, those nine, whoever they are and where. And I wanted to see that, I wanted to see that time, the war with Sauron and the elves. For me personally, that would be the most interesting time. And funny enough, that was also the time Corey, the Tolkien professor, and I speculated in my video about, because that is, the time of Tarteperian, one of the bad and evil is a strong word, but one of the bad queens. And yeah, I wished we could see that, and now I'm no longer sure. Because why? Because Isildur lives 1,600 or 700 years later. And I don't think they will cram, because people have been speculating, they will cramp down like they will just go over 10 rulers and say this is the same timeline.
Yeah.
I hope they don't do that. I wouldn't like that.
Right now, there's the conventional wisdom is that the first 2 episodes are kind of a set, and that
Yes.
they're in some ways a prologue. And we
Yeah.
know, obviously, from the advertising when they threw out this image, which
Yeah.
supposedly now perhaps shows Finrod, Age of the Tree, so before the first age, that maybe they would spend these first 2 episodes kind of catching us up
Yeah.
in some way. But boy, if you catch us up all the way to past the year 3000 of the second age,
Mm.
that's a lot of catching up. I'll put it that
Yeah.
way. But
And
that's
it's not deserving of the material, if they
right.
really speed up the whole process of the ring forging and him giving out the rings and explaining, because this needs to be set up, right? The end of the second age and Sauron being captured.
A lot of
Why are the
backstory.
Numenorians so strong? You need a backstory. You can't do that in basically one episode, because what you said, that is, and again, Fellowship confirmed this, we will see Galadriel fighting cave trolls in an icy wasteland. Hashtag crossing the Helcaraxe. So
Hmm.
we will see
Years of the
probably,
trees.
Yes, of the trees, the beginning of the elves in the Undying Lands, them leaving, the whole gruesome journey. We will probably see that as a prolonged prologue of Finrod or whoever. And then you have like, I don't know, what, like 2 minutes left again for the ringcraft? Like,
Right.
no.
Now, that said, if you just told me right off the bat, like if back in 2019 when they made their big announcement,
Yeah.
if you just said, we're talking about the downfall of Numenor, I'd have
Yeah.
been like, all right, that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
cool. Let's do it.
yeah.
But they didn't, and I'll later when I go into my stuff, I'll explain why I assumed that they were going to be covering the Forging of the Rings. But yeah, to kind of set up this expectation that you're going to be covering this really exciting time of the
Yeah.
Forging of the Rings, and then now all of a sudden, apparently, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward. So I've got, when it comes to me, I've got like, it's almost like a wish fulfillment. It's my hopeful prediction for
Okay.
how it could actually still work out. But anyway, that's just me. That said, I'm not disappointed in seeing the downfall of Numenor. I
No,
just actually,
no.
in a prediction video I did months ago, I thought season 4, I thought
You,
maybe would
s-
be around when you see it.
you said that. That is
Yeah.
so crazy.
So I was perhaps only 3+ seasons off.
Mhm.
But anyway, all right. So, what are your thoughts then on how this fits in?
Yeah. So what the viewers should know, or those who don't know, like Isildur basically is at the end of the second age. So we could see I think, what is it, 6 seasons or five? I think 5 seasons. Five
I think
seasons. I
5
think
was, but
they
who
confirmed.
knows? It could be more. But
Yeah,
I think
whatever.
5 is the conventional wisdom.
Yeah, but these people, they lived longer lifespans than, let's say, Aragon. Aragon was, I think, 182 or something like that when he died. So that is, but these people, they were 400 plus years old. So you can have a pretty nice timeline. And so what I want to see, and my theory is, we will see well, the early days of Isildur, not him being a child. I don't want to see that, right?
Okay.
But I think we will see Tar Palantir as the king. He was the 24th. So after him came the 26th and the last king, Arpharazon. But I don't think we will start with literally the just days before the downfall. I do think we will see a few years
Okay.
of, the debauchery and the doom of Numenor, because that was, that was in the making for years. For Tar Palantir, it started with Tar Palantir, the last good king who came in between, evil kings. And I do think, and that was around the year 3170, whatever. So I think we will see a few hundred years over the course of the show, and they will introduce, the houses, very Game of Thronesy like, the
Okay.
faithful, the Kingsmen, and the faithful. So they need to set that up. They need to explain that, and then we had Sauron will come in later, right? So that would make sense then.
That's
Big,
true. If that rumor, right? If we see Sauron late, then you're right. Yes, that could
yeah.
be a thing.
Yeah, so they set up Numenor first, explain, Tarpalantir, the faithful, they try to get back into the graces of the gods, and then, they catch Sauron, and in 50 years, he becomes from prisoner to advisor of Ar-Pharazôn, the next king, but that will, I think the drowning maybe in season 4 or something like that. You
So you
really,
still feel like it would start potentially with, let's say, Tarplanter becomes king, and you have that civil war that happens.
yes,
So season 4 would be the downfall. Still, that's kind of
right.
where I had the downfall, but I was gonna have it like
I would
first you see the forging, then you see the. Okay, but yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that would be my theory. Not a
Okay.
super young. I think he would just be the reigning king, Tar Palantir, during that time. And he made many prophecies. That dude is actually, so this is what Corey said. He's so scary. They didn't dare to touch him because he was like, like a wizard foretelling things,
Hence the
with the
name Palantir. He has far-seeing prophecies
exactly.
essentially.
Yes. So, he foretold the thing with the trees. They didn't dare to touch the tree then. So I think it's a really cool time, and you can
Oh,
put
he's a very interesting character, and of course,
and
it's his daughter, right,
his
Muriel.
daughter Miriel is his
Yeah.
daughter, exactly. So you can, really play out, because I do think he loved his daughter, and this is not what he wanted for her.
Because she ends up being forcefully married to
Yeah.
Pharazôn so
Her
he could become
cousin.
king.
Yeah, her
Yeah,
cousin.
not a good time for Muriel, for sure.
And this is
So
not a
okay,
Cersei Jamie situation,
yeah,
people.
yeah,
It's
good point.
not.
Okay, so you're saying that come episode 3-ish or
Yeah.
whatever, we've done this prologue perhaps, that we
Yeah.
have Isildur. So Isildur at that time, his grandfather, I think Amandil, is going to be eventually on the council of
Yes.
Pharazôn.
Yes.
So it's probably like his dad and his grandfather are probably more active political players at that point, and
Yeah.
Isildur is kind of, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
waiting his turn
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so. And I'm pretty sure we see his brother Anarion because I do think the spin-off show then later or the late seasons will show them in Middle-earth, arriving in Middle-earth, barely making it out with their 6 or 9, I always confuse that,
I
ships
think it's
out.
9 ships.
I think we will also see that, and maybe they end the show where they started with the Lord of the Rings, with the War of the Last Alliance. But then you don't see Isildur's full backstory because you don't see him not throwing the ring into the volcano. And I do think this is his moment, he will be set up as the hero, right, of the
Do we
story.
think that that's where it's headed?
I think they don't want to make this very black and white. I think they want, like George R. R. Martin did. I think they want a lot of gray characters, like even the goodies do have to do bad deeds. So, but you know what I mean. He's obviously. I mean, you have Ar-Pharazôn, you have all these Sauron, you have all the probably really bad people counseling Ar-Pharazôn and Sauron. I think you have a lot of baddies, so you need a kind of Aragorn hero, and I think that will be Isildur.
Okay. Okay. I
Um,
mean, you could maybe like Elrond could be perhaps that, or Galadriel perhaps,
yes,
or
human. I mean, yeah, no, I
oh, I
mean,
got you. Okay, on the human
I
side,
mean, human. Yeah.
Elendil. I mean, could be. We just found out apparently that Elendil is cast.
The dad was cast, and I was like, "Hi,
All right,
hi,
fair enough.
who are you?" You need humans to identify with. This is what I always preach. Dwarves are good, elves are obviously epic. I'm an elf stan. And apparently now we have hobbits, but this is not what you fully identify with. It's the easiest, even if they're Numenorians and they live longer lives, they're the easiest to portray in a show. And I think they will be the majority of the cast will be humans. It's the
All
age
right.
of Numenor, like especially that age they then show, because the elves,
Oh, very much so. You're right. I mean, all the story that you want to see during that time period is taking place on Numenor.
yeah.
Like this, I mean, during Middle Earth, Tolkien didn't write very much on like what is happening on Middle Earth, and so it would be kind of a weird story to be like, no, we're going to cover everything. Okay, here's the Numenorian section.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to watch them play cards over in Rivendell. I don't know,
Yeah,
like
that's like boring AF. But then you have, Sauron building a temple of doom, worshipping Melkor, burning people alive. Yeah, do you want to see that? Yeah,
yes,
please.
yes, you do.
Um,
Right. So you're right that once you hit that time, the time of Isildur, yeah, you want to stay on Numenor. It's true. Like it
yeah.
would be very weird to try to interject hobbits, for instance, if you were like that's the story you're covering. So anyway, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
we were talking about what else could we see. We had that exact discussion. I was on Chris Philosopher's Games. Shout out to Chris, a friend of ours.
Awesome, awesome, awesome channel.
Yeah, and I was on a 3.5 hour stream talking about Isildur with him.
We
Yeah,
probably won't go quite that long. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes. So,
yeah, exactly, just below. And we were like, what did Galadriel do at the end of the Second Age? I have no idea. We know what she did during the forging of the rings and what
correct.
happened afterwards. And when she, left through Moria and, founded her own kingdom, we did know what Elrond did during that time. We don't know what they did
And in
at the end
fact,
of the Second
there's
Age.
reason to believe that she didn't even really participate, let's say, in the War of the Last Alliance. I mean, like, there's
Yeah.
not any text that shows her, in
No.
participating in that. So
And you can't show the division of the elves, what I think you and I also talked about this. This is highly interesting because you think, the elves, obviously, they stick together. No, they didn't. There's a division between even family bonds, like Celebrimbor is related to Galadriel and Elrond and to Gil-galad even, right? They are basically a family, but they didn't get along. They disagreed about Sauron.
certainly
And
about Sauron.
they didn't know that he was Sauron about Anatar, and so they split up basically. Eregion, and then the Gwaith'amirdain, so the people around surrounding Celebrimbor and Gil-galad, they were basically two fronts at that time, and then Galadriel went her complete other way. So the elves were not one union at that time, and that's interesting because that's always what Sauron wanted. So they can't
And,
portray.
and it's a great point because, the idea, because we know that Galadriel has been cast.
Yeah.
And if the story goes as you suggest, and as appears to be the case, perhaps, that
Yeah.
starting episode 3, we're Numenor focused, it's
Yeah.
Galadriel almost just becomes a bit player at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have to really craft a whole set of fanfic to make her relevant in that period.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird to be like, I
I
mean, it's almost
know.
like, why bother? I know. So I'm going to give you my here's how we make everything right.
Have you talked to Amazon? Can we
That's right. Yeah.
can we
No.
send this to
As I say,
Amazon?
I'm a
Right?
major insider. I know everybody. Okay, but I got to set the ground work first. Okay. So the reason that I assumed that we were going to be doing the Forging of the Ring, and I'm going to just go through the advertising that Amazon did all the way back to 2019. And I'll say this too, when I did my prediction video on the season, so I was like, Forging of the Ring season 1, I believe season 2 is going to end with the rise of the Nine, including the Witch King. Season 3 was going to have Sauron defeated the second time by Pharazôn. Season 4 was going to be the downfall. Season 5 was going to be the War of the Last Alliance. That's kind of the way I thought it might go. And the common critique that I got from that prediction was people were like, I think they're going to spend way more time on the Forging of the Rings. Like, in other words, where you think season 1 is going to end, that's where season 5 is going to end. That's where a lot of people were coming down on that idea. That they were
I
just
would
going to
be
like,
one of those.
So, so the reasoning for that, first of all, you've got this. There was a synopsis that Amazon
Yes.
came out with, and I won't read the whole thing, but the relevant part says, first of all, beginning in a time of relative peace. Is what it says. Which, if we go with the idea that we're starting with Numenor, other than this prologue. I mean, the prologue, I don't know. Anyway, there's not really a relative peace there. There's a civil war happening. You've got the faithful and the kingsmen. It seemed a little disingenuous to say that it's all is peaceful. Whereas the time of the Forging of the Rings, relative peace. From the darkest depths of the misty mountains to the majestic forests of the elf capital Lindon to the breathtaking island kingdom of Numenor. Okay, the darkest depths of the misty mountains suggests, more than suggests, strongly implies Moria.
Yeah.
Moria closes its doors for thousands of years
Yeah.
in 1697. The War of Elves and Sauron. So if you're gonna say we're going to Moria, all right. Anyway, Moria's closed. Hey, we're in Numenor. Like, that's odd. It's odd to suggest that that's like one of the main places for this series, and then start after it closes is weird. When they made their Twitter announcement back in 2019, it was like,
With the
welcome to
maps.
the second age,
Yeah.
right? And they chose specifically the date March 7th, 2019. 3719, the rings. Here, if you're talking about Numenor, you're talking about one ring, basically. You're talking about the ring. You're not really talking about the nine. The nine aren't on Numenor. The three elven rings aren't anywhere near Numenor. The seven aren't either. And they used the three rings for the Elven King's poem in conjunction with that advertising. So again, they're talking about the forging of the rings. The rings, everybody. And they came out with a map. It was a series of maps that got more and more defined. They put more and more info until they had one final map with a whole bunch of info on it.
Yeah.
More place names. All right. Well, the final map, the one with the most verbiage, just done very deliberately, obviously. They were like filling in the names. They were trying to show via the map what the era of the second age of the series is going to look like. We're about to get a visit from my cat, perhaps. Kid Laura, you no? Yeah. All right, she's going to lay down. Okay. We might see a big gray blob go across here. There's a few clues in the map that give us the time frame that they're talking about. For instance, the map shows Minhiriath. Minhiriath, and on the map, it's a very heavily forested region.
Yeah.
Well, those forests got wiped out by the Numenorians beginning around the year 800 or so of the Second Age.
Aldarion, yeah, who started his shipping guild.
Cut of trees, we need boats. And so they...
Yeah. Well, Dad forbade him to cut them down in Numenor, so he went to Middle-earth.
He was like, fine, I know where there's some trees. And so, there were still trees there during the forging of the rings because during the War of the Elves and Sauron, Sauron burned the remaining forest basically to remove a resource from the Numenorians. Oh, how cute. All right, what is Kitty's name?
Teddy.
Oh.
Because she's like a teddy bear.
Oh, look at that.
She's
Those eyes, beautiful.
Yeah, you can do anything with her.
All right, we'll just do a cat video. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That's
well,
awesome.
This is YouTube. This wax people.
That's a good point. That'll be the screen cap. Cats! And some other stuff about Lord of the Rings.
Basically, this is Tevildo. This is Sauron's fast form people.
Oh, good point. Good point. So you might say, oh, they just accidentally put some trees where they shouldn't have in Minhiriath. But you've got Austin Ethil, which doesn't appear on any map after 1697 of the Second Age because Sauron laid waste to it. It ceased to be a city. You wouldn't put it on the map because it's not there. Yeah. So it's not relevant in Isildur's time, but it's incredibly relevant during the forging of the rings. It's where most of the rings, minus the One Ring, get forged. So why would you place a dead city on the map that you're using to announce your show? Yeah. Because that city is important. That's why you would do it. It would seem odd that you'd give us a very specific map showing us a very specific place and time, only for that map to be relevant for like 1 or 2 episodes of a 5-season series. Why not simply show a detailed map of Numenor if you're going to do that? Yeah. Or just give us a map that we're used to seeing of the Third Age. Like, why be that specific and then be like, yeah, we don't care about it. It's weird that you do that. So that's why I'm thinking they haven't done that. So
it's just the Sauron thingy, him coming on later doesn't make any sense then.
Right. I agree that the Sauron thing is
because he came for the rings, right?
An obstacle to what I'm about to say. So yeah. I'm kind of calling maybe BS on that.
No, but go on.
But all right. All right. So my thought is, okay, let's assume we get Isildur episode 3. Mm-hmm. Done the prologue. Okay. I think perhaps what the show might do is, hey, let's pick up where the audience knows us from the Lord of the Rings. The prologue to Lord of the Rings is War of the Last Alliance. Yeah. So we pick it up right there because we've seen it. We have a Elendil cast. Maybe we even go ahead and see like their version of the end of the War of the Last Alliance. This show does its version of that battle. I
like it.
And Isildur gets the ring. We know from text from the Fellowship of the Ring, text from Unfinished Tales. I'll read you a couple of things. But we know that Isildur very interested in what this was. How do I deal with this ring? He transcribed the runes.
He transcribed it. Yes, this is what Gandalf later finds.
He tried to research this thing. Because he was like, and he could tell. He put it on and it gave him great pain. But I think he was maybe thinking, how can I help rule? How can this help me rule? Yeah. And so he's doing all kinds of research on this. I'm going to read real fast the quote from Fellowship of the Ring, Council of Elrond. It's Gandalf talking about this, and Boromir kind of interjects. There lies in Minas Tirith still, unread, I guess, by any save Sauron and myself, since the kings failed, a scroll that Isildur made himself. For Isildur did not march away straight from the war in Mordor, as some have told the tale. Some in the north, maybe, Boromir broke in, all know in Gondor that he went first to Minas Anor, Minas Tirith, and dwelt a while with his nephew, Meneldil, instructing him before he committed to him the rule of the South Kingdom. In that time, he planted there the last sapling of the white tree in memory of his brother. But in that time also he made this scroll, said Gandalf, and that is not remembered in Gondor, it would seem, for this scroll concerns the ring, and thus wrote Isildur therein. The great ring shall go now to be an heirloom of the North Kingdom, but records of it shall be left in Gondor, where also dwell the heirs of Elendil, lest a time come when the memory of these great matters shall grow dim. So I read that just because to say he does spend this time in Minas Tirith. He plants the tree. He's trying to. He's the king now. He's the king of all these kingdoms.
Yeah, his brother died. Yeah.
His brother died terribly, and he does have this artifact of great power, and I think he's attempting to figure out how to wield it. And so I could imagine in his attempt to figure this out, he might ask somebody like Elrond. He has a very strong relationship with Elrond. Rivendell is where he's got his infant son and his wife. They're staying there. So perhaps, I don't know that he would ask Galadriel, but perhaps you could even bring Galadriel into that fold of people, elves that were alive at the time that could say, oh, let me tell you the origin of this ring. And that's your lead in, that's your framework for then going back to the forging of the ring. And then you could occasionally cut back to the present time as we see this journey of Isildur trying first to use the ring, realizing he can't, and then making the very tough decision, I'm sure, to, as we see in Unfinished Tales, it's a great, I did a thing on the disaster of the Gladden Fields. They cover it in the Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, the movies, but I would say it's, they kind of gloss over it.
Yeah.
That is a very dramatic sequence, and it's incredibly important. He loses not only Isildur, but 3 of his sons die. It's a very, very dramatic thing. And one quote from that I just want to read, because I think it could be this arc for our Isildur character in the present, while we occasionally do flashbacks to see what's happening in the back. So they're being surrounded by orcs. There's a break in the action. The orcs are kind of regathering, and he's talking to his son, Elendor. There was a pause, though the most keen-eyed among the Dunedain said that the orcs were moving inwards, stealthily, step by step. Elendor went to his father, who was standing dark and alone as if lost in thought. Atarinya, my father, he said, what of the power that would cow these foul creatures and command them to obey you? Is it then of no avail? Alas, it is not. I cannot use it. I dread the pain of touching it, and I have not yet found the strength to bend it to my will. It needs one greater than I now know myself to be. My pride has fallen. It should go to the keepers of the 3. So he's made this choice.
Yeah.
I'm taking this ring to get rid of it. Now, would he have the strength to get rid of it when the time mattered? That's a question. Probably not, frankly. But in this moment, he intends to. I have no pride left. I can't control this thing. I'm giving it to Elrond. The Keepers of the 3 could you also throw in, Galadriel if you wanted. And so he has made this choice. He's discovered what the power is, discovered it's too much for him, and I'm going to get rid of it. And then he dies in the act. And that arc, learning that it's too powerful for him and thus deciding I have to get rid of it, would be a great thing to keep cutting back to while you're showing these flashbacks to the forging of the ring. So that's how I feel like you could show this. You're concentrating on the history, the origin of the rings, and then you have these flash forwards to see how he's taking that information in as king. I think that would be really effective, and I'd be all game for that. So that's my fix for this show.
But then you leave out all the Numenor parts.
Well, I mean, perhaps that's season 1, for instance, or like you have a framework that sets this up, and then you just keep going through history. Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, you're right.
But they showed on the maps. They heavily showed then Numenor because obviously nobody knew that bloody island. Yes, some of the places. They no longer exist, and people don't know that. But it's a whole bloody island, and a lot happened there. And Tolkien even called it the Age of Numenor. I love that, and this is what I speculated we will see after the drowning, because this is what I meant. You need a completion of his story arc. It's not just,
Right.
and he was the goodie and he left for Numenor. No, he had internal struggles, and this is the whole ring struggle. And we even, on Philosopher's Games stream, we talked about, would Elrond have been able to destroy the ring?
Big question.
And because the elves liked to test themselves. I mean, I think that was very Galadriel specific, because we know she's very prideful, and she had that in her um, from her youth on. I think her test was a different, thing. But yeah, I love that, and I think I once read that he, even before, he always thought about giving the ring to somebody else because it was overpowered. He felt overpowered by it, and he didn't think this was, because imagine, he's not Celebrimbor. He doesn't. The whole law of how the rings were forged was lost. What is written in the ring is just Sauron's spell. The first lines of the ring. That is a retelling, basically, of the story of the by the elves. He has no idea. None of these people have an idea what is the power of this ring. Celebrimbor is dead. No one else was there. I don't think the law. Maybe some of the elves know it, but they don't really know the power of the ring. So I really like what like tried to explain, that he tried to find out what is this magic, like us trying to find out what Tolkien means with his magic.
Right, right. I guess we do have a giant library. It's called Google. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
the whole thing, the three rings for the elven kings under the sky, seven for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, nine for mortal man, blah, blah, blah. That is not in the ring. That is the elves retelling what happened to the ring. And I don't think that Isildur, maybe because they still were close to the elves at that time. I don't know, but does he really know?
because I don't think he could read the actual runes either on the ring. Like he transcribed them, like he wrote, he copied them, but I don't think he could read it. Gandalf is reading Isildur's text,
Yes.
and so he says, "I deem it to be a tongue of the black land, since it is foul and uncouth. What evil it saith, I do not know, but I trace here a copy of it, lest it fade beyond recall." And then he goes on to say, like, hey, if I set it back on fire, the runes would come back, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to screw up the ring, and I don't know what it, I don't want to
Yeah.
hurt it. So in the moment, at least, as he's writing that, he doesn't know what it means. But you're right. Maybe over time, he
I
does have
think he
access
learned,
to.
and I think he then, then he got a bit fearful, because this is what happened to the elves, right? When they kind of telepathically had, because they didn't obviously see Sauron forging the One Ring, but they were connected, especially Celebrimbor. But the three ring bearers, it is said, they heard him speaking. Obviously, not like I hear you now, but something telepathy. We don't really know. Tolkien likes not to explain things. They heard him saying Aj Nazgul, that whatever, and then they knew what he said. So I think Isildur would be able to find that out, and I then think he would be like, "What the f is this?"
Yeah.
I mean, he knew Sauron and him and his father and the whole armies. They fought him, but I'm not sure if if they really knew this. A lot of the magic is literally in this bloody ring, because otherwise they wouldn't have wasted 12 years. They would have gone for the ring earlier. You know, the,
Yep. No, I
the
get you. I get you. I think you're right. Like by the time we get to the War of the Ring, the major powers know about it, and they call it Isildur's
yeah,
Bane. And there's like a
yeah,
they know the backstory, but
yeah.
Isildur is probably still playing a little catch up, trying to figure out like what have I got? What is
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had the ring. Remember, Tolkien confirmed he had the ring in Numenor, right? The ring didn't drown or anything. He could,
Right. His
however, he
spirit
carried
somehow
it.
managed to carry the ring back to
Yeah,
Middle Earth when he
yeah.
perished. Was the
Because a
idea?
lot of people always ask that, where was the ring? It should have drowned. No, no, he
It's in
had.
one of Tolkien's letters. He writes a
Yes.
But yeah,
whatever, we accept it,
we
but he
accept it.
had the ring in Numenor. So Isildur knew, first of all, Sauron in fair form, because he still had fair form then. He's one of the only people alive that,
That's a great
fighting
point.
that battle, and at that time, who knew Sauron in fair form, acting in, full might and
Great
power.
point. Would have known him pre his, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and wearing the ring.
Wait, so you're right. I mean, my
Yeah.
version of like fixing things isn't perfect
I
either,
don't,
frankly. But
I
for
don't.
5 seasons, I feel like it gets you through a season. I'll put
I
it that way.
know. Yeah, yeah. I
Well, we still get
This
the
is
14.
what I see at the end, and but I do think they will set up the whole. I don't want Numenor just in flashbacks and then just be in Middle Earth. I, I want to see the debauchery and the downfall. This is like my Babylon. I want to see that, people.
Yeah, it's a trick, and it was always a trick. We were always wondering, like, how do they do that year, the gap in
Mm,
time, and they've got
yeah.
humans and elves, so some of these characters can live through the whole time, but then many of them can't. So how do you
No.
make
Yeah.
a cohesive series and project that? And so maybe these questions are being answered right now because it's just weird. Like I'm just hoping they didn't make the choice of let's gloss over the
Yeah.
first 3,000 years of the Second Age in two
No.
episodes and then just get
No.
right to the downfall of Numenor. That would be a real shame. And it would, you're right, you're leaving out enough background that it lessens the impact actually of the downfall if you just
Yeah.
kind of go, whoop. Anyway, that happened.
Yeah.
So, I don't
I
know.
really think the downfall, and maybe this is a bit like the Scouring of the Shire. The whole story, the whole series will have like two, three, four, five endings, because everybody would think, okay, so the downfall of Numenor, that was it now. No, then we go to Middle Earth, and then we fight the dude again. Like a lot
One
of
thing that Fellowship of Fans had mentioned, apparently there was a rumor that the story is linear. It
yeah,
is not non-linear storytelling. But
yeah,
then they did mention that there could be flashbacks. Like in other
yes.
words, I think maybe by saying it's not non-linear storytelling, it was trying to say it's not going to be like The Witcher.
Oh my
But The Witcher
bloody,
season one was like it just didn't tell you, right? It was hiding the ball that they weren't in the same time frames, and then they're like,
yeah,
by the way, they're not in the same time. So it's not going to do that. It's going to be very clear as to what time you're in when they're
yes.
describing whatever they're describing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, because the thing is confusing enough, right?
Right.
So that we basically will know Elrond and Galadriel, and I mean, yeah, Isildur, and these people, we saw them, and Gilgalad, we saw them like for a second, so we don't know them.
Gotcha.
So so we just know two people who have been recasted, even. So you need, like to explain a few
A
to
few
make.
folks.
Yeah, and don't
Um,
make it too confusing, because it's a whole new world. They said they want to widen the world, right? This is the whole discussion about, bringing in new races, new territories, exploring the world of Middle Earth. Because, yes, there's more than, Mordor and the Shire and whatnot. So I really do think they will.
do you think they will? Yeah, I
Yeah.
I still feel confident we're going to see more of the forging of the rings than just a part of a whatever, some portion of a 2 episode prologue. I feel like that
The,
just too much info there and too many hints that they were going to show that for them
yeah.
just to not do it. I don't see that somehow. So I don't know how they're doing it, but they're going to figure out a way.
So I just tweeted, because somebody sent me a tweet or something and asked me about my opinion. And I just tweeted, and this is, here, fingers crossed. I hope for spin-offs, and I do think Bezos will have spin-offs. He didn't, spend all this money
I
just
gotcha.
on one. So I do think, and look what Game of Thrones is doing, what HBO is doing. They have prequels. Look what Star Wars was doing. They have prequels. They touched on subjects that were mentioned before. Now we get an Obi-Wan series telling us the story of Obi-Wan from the before the OG movies.
That's
So
very true.
I
No, and you're absolutely right. From a selfish standpoint,
yeah,
I would hate to think like, well, in 10 years,
I
you're
know.
like, what?
I know, but
What? But okay, I hear you. No, you're right. That's very possible. They just They tell
Yeah.
the story of the downfall of Numenor,
Yeah.
and then they're like, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Next time
Yeah.
when we do another five
Yeah.
season series, we'll cover the Forging of the Rings.
Yeah.
Boy,
Because
they just
now
with all the hints they gave, I'm still like, it just
I
seems.
know I feel like
Did they change their
they
minds?
no, I think it's easier. So, okay, so I've worked in TV and film production and whatnot, and I think it's easier to start because this has been 20 years for oh yeah, okay, we had the Hobbit movies, but but for 20 years since the OG movies, you didn't have anything, world related. So, and that was not very high fantasy. This will be very, if you show the Forging of the Rings during that time, it's very, because there's a lot of elf stuff happening. There's a lot, like if they even go to the Undying Lands and whatnot, I think they don't want to do it too high fantasy because that would bring them to a genre which is very niche. I think they wanted and I think it's right that Bezos said, "Give me an Game of Thrones 2.0." But what he meant is obviously the money and the power and the success behind it. But I also do think it is a show of politics, and now everybody will shit on me in the comment section, but yes, you had, especially in Numenor, you had politics with these houses and factions. And I do think it's easier to portray something like that as a first show, set up this world, and then come in with the big guns with prequels and whatnot, and have maybe the first age, maybe, the Forging of the Rings with more high fantasy aspects, which is harder to grasp. It's a harder to tell story, but they will have learned from the easier to tell story of kings and queens
I
being.
got you. So you're saying, in other words, because it's been so long since Lord of the Rings, like for instance, I would make the case that, well, you had Sauron, we had the ring. It would be easy enough to then link that, like, hey, remember the ring and how important it was that Frodo threw it in the volcano?
But
Well,
how
how did
much
that
did we?
start?
But
Here's how
how
it
much
started.
did we learn? Yeah, but Matt, look, they never got into the mythical
I
aspect
got you.
in the
I got you.
show.
A little more
They
grounded, perhaps you're saying.
more grounded, yeah. And I do think they wanted to take that approach. It's easier to tell, it's easier to cast, it's easier to start or restart, in this world and type of world, to tell the stories, of a queen that has to marry against her will her cousin and what. It's easier than saying, this is the first age, this is Gondolin.
If they end up doing this Numenor centric first season,
Yeah,
I hear you. I hear you. That would be a good. And it's again, I like the idea of doing the downfall of Numenor. It's a great
yeah,
story to tell. It
yeah.
just feels a little odd for it to be now, but yeah. So
Yeah, I
um,
all the things you said with the places, and with them showing us these, like, I don't get it. Why can't we get it? But Matt, in 10 years we'll get our spin-off. Just
in
this,
10 years, we'll be back doing this, and we'll
this
be
is
like,
what
okay, I
Matt is
wonder what the.
this is what Matt is predicting. We'll just be a bit older, but maybe the camera is better
The
then.
camera will right. We'll do the little filter, and it'll be like, oh look.
With selfie filter, then it's
Hey, so I think we've set out what we think. We're obviously, a little questioning of what this could mean. If you out there in the comments have some ideas for like, hey,
yes.
here's how they could do it and make everything beautiful. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Mhm.
Or if you're just like, boo, you can do that too. So I guess that's it. But thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciate you sitting in on this. This is very, just as I say, shocking information.
I
Didn't see this
know.
coming. Wouldn't have predicted it. And I am just fascinated to see how this all comes together. So,
I
September of
know.
2022.
So it's getting closer. It's almost Christmas, people. So
That's right.
it's
We're getting
kind
there.
of soon.
I feel like they probably won't drop I mean, we're all waiting on a trailer, but I don't think they're going to do that
No.
as long as Wheel of Time is still a
Yeah.
thing. Because Amazon's running both of those series,
Yeah.
and I don't think they want to undercut Wheel of Time with a,
Never.
hey, by the way, here's a better series. Damn it.
No. No.
Anyway, so yeah.
And they probably have something up their sleeves afterwards for the Christmas time. I think next year, beginning of next year, they'll start with behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I do think they will pick special dates, like when Frodo threw
Oh,
the
sure.
ring in, you know.
Meaningful in canon type
Yeah,
dates,
just like Star Wars does, you know.
right?
Like I do think on, May the 4th, uh probably Obi-Wan will drop. Yay. Oh my God, Matt, we have to do Star Wars stuff
Okay, well, I
together.
do Star Wars stuff on Dorkless all the
I
time,
know,
so
I know.
be happy to get your thoughts on it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll definitely cover the new Boba show.
Okay, we'll recap some of that stuff. That'd be great.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you as always, Helen. Appreciate it. We'll be doing this again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody out there. Hope everybody has a good one, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye bye.